Okay, so in this video we are going to be solving multi-step algebraic equations. So we'll just go ahead and get started. Let's say we had x plus 3 minus 2x plus 5 is equal to 10. So looking at this equation, the first thing you want to do is ask yourself, what is the goal of this math sentence? It's to get the variable by itself. But the problem is we have, how many terms do we have in this equation? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 terms. And in two of the terms, x and negative 2x, we have a variable in two of those equations. So the first thing we want to do is combine those like terms. So x and negative 2x are similar terms because they both have an x value. So this is actually 1x, one group of x, and this is negative 2 groups of x. So 1 minus 2 is negative 1, so that's negative x. So 1x minus 2x is negative x. So again, just a little review, 1 minus 2. So if you had Superman, he'd be starting at, you know, 1 mile up in the sky, and then he'd be going down negative 2. And then where is Superman at now? He is negative 1 underground. So that's how we ended up with that negative x. So then we also combine our like terms on the left side of the equal sign, which is 3 and 5, and that's just 8. So we say plus 8. And then that's equal to 10. And again, what's the goal of this math sentence? To get the variable by itself. Well, it looks better than where we were initially. We combined our like terms, and we have a negative 1, which is causing us that problem. This negative 1 isn't written there, it's just the negative sign. And then we also have this 8. So let's get rid of the 8 first. So we're going to subtract that 8. And then when we do that, we are left, we bring down the negative x. 8 minus 8 is 0. And then 10 minus 8 is 2. So now, what's the goal of the math sentence? To get the variable by itself. And what's causing us that problem is that negative sign. So I can actually just multiply this by negative 1. And what gives me the right to do that? I have to do it to the other side. So negative times a negative is a positive. So that's positive x. And now we've met our goal, which is to get the variable by itself. And x is equal to negative 2. Okay, so let's try another example. Okay, so let's do one with some parentheses in here. So let's say we have 3 times the quantity of x minus 2 and minus 5 times the quantity of 2x plus 1, and that is equal to 3. So again, what is the goal of the math sentence? It's to get the variable by itself. And again, we have variables in a couple locations on the left side of the equal sign. So the easiest thing would be just to get rid of these parentheses, because right now, if I was to ask how many terms we see in this equation, a lot of people might say, well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or something like that. But actually, technically, there's only 3 terms. This is one term. This is term 1. This is the first term. And then this whole thing right here is the second term. And then this is your third term. And what I like to call what's inside of these parentheses, I like to call these subterms. And we want to basically free these subterms out of the parentheses, and then they can become their own term. We do that by distributing this 3 into both of these subterms, because once you have the parentheses there, it really makes the x minus 2 is really a factor. The whole thing together is a factor, and then this 3 is a factor, and this 3 times the x minus 2 factor gives you this entire term. So let's free up those subterms, that x and the negative 2. So when we distribute it, we get 3x minus 6. And then we're going to do the same thing here. This second term is really made up of 2 factors, negative 5, and this whole thing, 2x plus 1, is another factor. And then the 2x is a subterm within that factor, and then this positive 1 is also a subterm within the second factor. So to free up these two subterms, we're going to actually distribute this negative 5 to both of these subterms, and we get negative 10x minus 5 equals 3. So now instead of having 3 terms, we actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 terms. And now we can truly combine like terms, whereas we really couldn't do that because we had so many parentheses and our subterms were locked inside of these factors due to those parentheses. So we can say, well, the 3x and the negative 10x, that looks really similar, so we can make that into negative 7x, because 3 minus 10 is negative 7. And then we have negative 6 and negative 5. And negative 6 minus 5 is negative 11. And then this is equal to 3. Well, what's the goal of this math sentence? It's to get the variable by itself, which in this case is x. And so what's causing us that problem? There's two things. We have the negative 7 and we have the negative 11. Well, it's actually easier just to get rid of the 11 first, because if we divided off the negative 7, you would end up with a bunch of fractions, which we want to avoid. So what gives us the right to do that? We add it to the other side. And then we're left with negative 7x is equal to 14. And then again, what's the goal of the math sentence? We want to get the variable by itself, so we divide it by negative 7. And then x is equal to negative 2. And then we are done. Okay, so let's do one more example, and hopefully that drives it home. Okay, so let's do 4x minus 3 times the quantity of 6 plus x minus 1, and we'll say that's equal to 2. So when we look at this again, we should ask ourselves, well, how many terms do we have? And again, a lot of people might say, well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there's not. There's actually only, this is actually our first term. 4x is our first term. And the factors of that term are 4 and x. Those are each factors of that first term. And then our second term is this whole thing right here. And then the two factors are negative 3, and then the other factor is the quantity of 6 plus x. And the 6 is a subterm of that factor, and then this x is another subterm of this factor. So this is our second term. This whole thing is one term. And then this negative 1 is our third term. And then this 2 is our fourth term. So what we want to do is we want to free up our subterms, the 6 and x, out of these parentheses, and then we can see how many terms will we have once we get rid of the parentheses. So the way we do that is we're going to distribute this negative 3 to both of our subterms. And then we're going to bring down that 4x, and then so negative 3 times 6 is negative 18, and then negative 3 times positive x, that's negative 3x, minus 1, and that's equal to 2. So we combine our like terms, and 4x and negative 3x they look very similar, which they are, or as far as being like terms, because they both have an x as a factor. So 4 minus 3 is 1, so we're just left with 1x. And we have negative 18 minus 1, and that's negative 19. And then that is equal to 2. So again, what's the goal of this math sentence? We want to get the variable by itself, which is x. So we're going to get rid of the negative 19 by adding 19, because negative 19 plus 19 is 0. And what gives us the mathematical right to do that? We have to add that to the other side. And then what are we left with? X is equal to 21. And we're done.